Welcome to Wild Rivers Film Radio, the official podcast of the Wild Rivers Film Festival, broadcasting right here on KCIW 100.7 FM. I'm Sue Wright.
And I'm Bev Juday.
Thanks for joining us. Today, we're delighted to welcome two very special guests, best-selling author Joanie Lindenmeyer and filmmaker Michael Gorse, creators of the delightful new short film Wowzer, an official selection of the LA Indie Shorts. And Joanie and Michael are locals right here in Brookings, Oregon. So welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
And we'll be showing that film Wowzer at the Wild Rivers Film Festival this August.
Yes.
2026.
It's on my calendar. I will be there.
Okay. Fantastic. I look forward to it. It's going to be fun.
Yes.
Wowzer is a heart-forward story that blends humor, imagination, and a touch of magic. And we're excited to talk about how charming a project has made its way from page to screen. Woohoo! So, and before we get started, I'd like to thank the Wild Rivers Film Festival's 2025 presenting sponsor, the Tallawahdaini Nation, whose generous support makes both the festival and our summer film workshop possible. We also thank Oregon's Wild Rivers Coast, Sutter Coast Hospital, and the city of Brookings. To learn more about supporting independent film on the Wild Rivers Coast, visit wildriversfilmfestival.com. If you're new to the show, welcome. The Wild Rivers Film Festival is a 4-day celebration of independent, regional, and international cinema held each August in Brookings, Oregon. We screen dozens of films across multiple venues with filmmaker Q&As, panels, and special events designed to connect audiences directly with the artists behind the work. This year's film festival runs August 13 to 16, and passes are on sale now. So, Joanie and Michael, welcome again to the Wild Rivers Film Radio. It's wonderful to have you both here. Joanie, let's start with you.
Okie dokie.
You're a best-selling author known for stories that spark emotional connection. Could you introduce yourself to our listeners and share a bit about your work and how Wowzer first came to life?
Absolutely. And now I'll try to put this in a nutshell since I've written 3 books in 2 years, so I'm always having more stories to share. And when you hang out with Mike Gorse, there's always more stories too. And that's probably where we might want to start at some point in time. But I was raised in San Diego. In a Catholic family and attended St. John's Evangelist Church in elementary school. And Mike was a student there. And my parents knew his parents. So that's where sort of my life began. As I continued on, I graduated from San Diego State, and then I joined the convent. I had this thing that Jesus said, Joanie, join the convent. So I joined the convent and moved to Los Angeles. Well, in the first year, they missioned me. They sent me to Lewiston, Idaho, where lo and behold, I met the love of my life. And my heart just fluttered and fluttered and fluttered and fluttered. And I had never been in love before. I didn't know about this gay thing and this queer thing. So lo and behold, here I am in love with her and she's in love with me. So what do we do? So the book, None Better, An Amazing Love Story, is our story of how we both came to be and how we figured out what we needed to do with our life as a couple, as individuals, as gay people, as Catholic people. And so lo and behold, bottom line, we had to leave the convent. And we left the Catholic Church. We tried for 39 years to have the Catholic Church marry us. We petitioned deacons, priests, bishops, and even the popes. And no go. The Catholic Church still is a very staunch believer that same-sex marriages are not permissible. So lo and behold, Carol had a stroke in 2014 in our 30th year of being together, and she ended up at Curry Good Samaritan, where we met Father Bernie Lindley. And then from there, we said, Bernie, would you marry us? And he said, how about Wednesday? So finally, we were able to get married as a sacrament as well as civility. And so that's just absolutely beautiful. So our stories in None Better are just hilarious. From the from the
They are.
they are just hilarious. So the wild boar that are in our condo, and the holy water that turned me into a wet T-shirt act, and Carol doing a pole dance on the subway, and people would always say, "How did you get into that situation? How did you get out of it?" So, anyways, all three of my books are packed with stories, real life stories. They're raw, they're authentic. It covers everything from grief to joy. So, lo and behold, Mike and I get connected. Do you want to jump in with that one?
So you and
You're
Mike
doing really good.
you and Michael grew up together in
Yes.
San Diego. Then you haven't seen each other for these years and years.
Yes, Mike, jump in there and tell your version of it.
So, Michael.
No, actually, Sue's the perfect person to pick that one up
Oh,
because
okay.
that's how I got here.
Okay, so we were in the process of launching our first Wild Rivers Film Workshop for youth. And one of the things we were thinking about doing was letting them create a short documentary on the canoe building, traditional canoe building that the Tolowa Dene Nation was doing. And I went to one of their events and we had asked, can we film it? And then one of our board members said, well, that might not be such a great idea. So we went without cameras and I'm walking down to this site. And here comes this guy with the camera over his shoulder on his way out. And it's like, oh, did you film this event? And it's like, yeah. It's like, well, we need to talk. I love it. So I managed to get him to meet with me at the Fisherman's Cafe down in Crescent City to see if I could get his film work from that day. And Michael, I'll let you take it from there.
Well, I don't know why I went there that day, other than I saw it posted and thought something is tugging me there, so I went there. And I didn't understand how I got the interview that I got out of Marva Jones, which was gorgeous and brilliant, and she's absolutely wonderful. And again, I'm thinking, well, that's cool. Who knew? And I'm on my way out thinking, wow, what a day. And Sue, I was almost out, and Sue pulled me back in. It's a little bit like a Godfather story in that
I think we're talking a lot about fate here. That's what it feels like.
Yeah,
Serendipitous moments happen all the time.
And so I get up here and I do some work for the festival, and I run into somebody who, for some reason, decides she's got to tell me about this author in town and shows me this book by this woman named Joanie Lindenmeyer. And I'm thinking, that is not a common name. And Ralph Lindenmeyer was my basketball, football, and baseball coach for most of my St. John's sporting years. So I
that's
love
my
this.
dad.
That's her dad. I love this man from childhood. And Joni was 3 years younger than me. I've taught her some guitar, I'm told, but she was 3 years younger. I don't really remember much of that portion of my youth, but it was fun. I was having and doing folk masses and stuff. And then you followed me into the folk masses there.
Yep.
And then my next door neighbors are the Arnsons family, just absolutely wonderful people. And Joanne had gotten, the oldest daughter had gotten a job for the Park and Rec department down in San Diego for San Diego Junior Theater. And the folks that ran that, Don and Bonnie Ward, were starting a song and dance troupe. And she came home one day and told my parents, you got to grab Mike and get him down to the Puppet Theater in Balboa Park and do this audition. I know he's going to get the job. So they showed up I was working at Hillside Hospital in the kitchen. They showed up as I was getting off work with the guitar and a change of clothes. We went down. I stood up when they called my name in the back of the Puppet Theater and wandered down the center aisle. Having done folk masses, I wandered down the center aisle singing the 59th Street Bridge song. And by the time I got to the stage, I knew I had the job.
Fantastic.
And that's how I started. And then Don and I just hit it off real well. And he got me hired for the Park and Rec department because they were moving into the Casa del Prado, which was from the Puppet Theater to the Casa del Prado is like going from a 99-seat house to a 700-seat house in a 70-foot proscenium. And I learned lighting by doing lighting starting out there. ended up at San Diego Opera Company, and life went on, and I went on the road, did a thing in Hollywood for a whole bunch of years where I got to do TV and specialize in some live TV. Now, that's enough about me. What happened to you?
Well, in that, isn't this crazy?
Yeah.
So I get this Facebook text from this guy named Michael Gorse, and I'm thinking, the Gorse family from San Diego. I've been in Brookings 34 years. He goes, I'm in town. Where are you? I said, what town are you in? He says, Brookings. And he said, well, let's do dinner. I said, okay, Kun Tai, let's meet right there in about an hour and a half. And so we went and met each other at Kun Tai, and the memories just flooded out of us. The love just flooded out of us. And I got to learn more about Mike, and he got to learn more about me. And lo and behold, our paths have been connected for this last year, a year and a few months. That's been about it.
I don't know if you remember this, but our first dinner together at Kun Tai, we were serenaded with Christmas carols from the high school
Madrigals or
chorale or whatever. Yeah. And so it just kind of, I figured apparently these people follow Joanie around and provide entertainment. Maybe I should just hang out with her for a while. She invited me to go to a book event with her, and I took the camera along, and that became basically the most of this
So
film.
kind of that's the birth of the Wowzer
That's
film.
the birth of Wowzer. We got in my car named Sparkles, and we headed to Coos Bay, where I had 2 book events planned, and you got that camera going. Joanie, hook up the microphone to your blouse, and let's just do this. Tell me about your life. Tell me about the books. And from raw authenticness, I just exploded. I cried. I was emotional, and Mike was there filming, and it was a discussion along the way. And so Wowzer came to be, and as he continued to create more and more film of me and my events and the people that were serving and were reaching and touching hearts, it turned into 3 main categories. And that's how he edited it with his brilliance and his imagination and your creativity. You're the one who edited it. I'm still trying to wrap my head around that this guy is filming me, my old friend. And so we came up with 3 areas. One is called The Grief Roadie, which is our road trip where I talk about the grief and still grieving my loss of my sweetie. It's been 4 years now. At that time, it was 3 years. Yeah. And after being together for 40 years, that grief hit me hard. And then the second one is Shout. And it's an SH with a quiet shh. And then it's an out. Be proud for who I am. Be proud of my gayness and my queerness. And so how that led to, at a book event, people sharing and talking and discussing, what does that mean? How do we as non-queer people help out with that? How do queer people have the courage, have the confidence to share who they really are? And then the third scene is total joy, because that's me. And Mike just kept calling me Joyously Joanie, so we went down to the beach. Why don't you talk about that one?
Well, the beach was a trippy one, because the beach, I didn't realize it, and Joanie had asked me to follow her on her morning walk, and then I asked her about why are we here, and Chrissy Field, and
the border of California and Oregon,
and Carol was on the board that helped create Chrissy Field.
Right.
So again, It's like
so there's another connection.
We were drawn there. And then that whole walk just kind of became kind of a fun, magical moment that pretty much tags the film. The middle of the film is the trippiest part, I think. Well, I don't know, at the beginning. When she started telling her story, I realized, because I've read None Better and hadn't read the other 2 at that point, and it became obvious that her whole story was she was dealing with the griefs in her life. Each of the second and third books were dealing with a different kind of grief that she had gone on. Healing Religious Hurts and Joyously Free were both solutionary kind of books with multiple stories. Hers, Elizabeth Ann Atkins, a variety of people that contributed. And so it's a wonderful anthology of how you deal with these things, and gives you a whole lot of different ways to cope and approach life. And that's I'm all about trying to get our stories told, and that this was the epitome of that.
Excellent. Well said. Well said.
Joanie, None Better is essentially a memoir for you, right?
Correct. I wrote 534 pages. My publisher said, Joanie, we've got to cut this down. This is way too much. And I said, absolutely. I've never read a book that big, and so we cut it down to 300. I wrote it 5 months after Carol died, and I wrote it in 5 months. I took the book coaching from Elizabeth Ann Atkins of twosisterswriting.com because I had never written before in terms of a book. And so I took her coaching expertise and I just really put it to heart. And there were times, Sue, this is absolutely amazing. There were times I would sit at the computer and I'm going to say God, the divine, just were in my fingers. I don't know what I was thinking or what was, but my fingers were moving. And I know that Jesus and Carol wrote that book with me. And that's why it became a bestseller, number 24, 4 months in a row. So then when I went on book tour, Sue, what happened was people kept saying, well, when did you come out as gay? How did you deal with this? What did you do about all this? And so those questions elicited joy, the joy of what it was like. And then more questions came about on the book tour of the healing religious hurts. So then when Mike came along and we could put it in film, in picture mode, it blew me away. I had no concept other than my big dream in my life, and I don't know where it's going to come from, is I think None Better will be a movie or a Netflix series or something. Because it's going to be the modern queer version of The Sound of Music. That's the bottom line. But meanwhile, how do I get there? I don't know. Well, I've got this genius right next to me who films and creates and edits and produces. And so I'm just following and hanging on to his coattails. Our collaboration has been up and down and up and down. I don't understand Mike, and he's trying to understand me. I'll tell you, it was an up and down cycle of, well, I don't know if I want this out there. What do we do with this?
I was just going to, because you have a memoir that you said was 500 plus pages to start with, and you pare that down. But now you're talking about a short film that really reflects your memoir. And I love the idea that you just filmed and you kind of let the categories emerge rather than making this sequential with your memoir.
And that's Mike's geniusness. He's the film producer. He's the film man. I'm just sort of the person in the story, But Mike is really where it comes down to. And I'm so appreciative, and his leadership and his patience with me, not understanding a film word. The film world is something else because it's intense.
Yes.
It's intense. And
there's no other way to describe it.
What you see is what it is. And that's how I wrote. But now he's putting it in film version.
Yes. And a picture's worth 1,000 words, but it still takes some time to... So I'm guessing that you didn't just start out trying to recreate None Better, but you're just filming Joanie and your interactions, and the Wowzer film is just sort of emerging.
I started out with the premise that it was impossible for me and inappropriate at this moment to try and recreate None Better. That's not what it was about. But what Joanie volunteered was her own very legitimate, very raw, very real, emotional story from the beginning. What I think might help is for you to share what the impetus was for your writing the book in the first place, how you found that file in the drawer in the kitchen.
Yes.
That became it. And because she had been taking notes on her life for some time with Carol in order to make sense of everything that she was going on, and doing it all as this incredible spiritual journey to help her and Carol through the toughest times of their lives by reminiscence. And we are nothing but our stories in my...
Authentic stories.
Authentic
and that's
story.
what Wild Rivers Film Festival is all about, is sharing authentic stories that have heart.
And we all have stories, don't we, Sue?
We all have stories.
Oh, my gosh, we all have stories. And so what kicked this off was Carol and I were told years ago, you should write a book, you should write a book. So we got a little binder out and we wrote down a couple things that we wanted in the book. Well, lo and behold, she dies. So that book, she has a stroke, a brain bleed stroke. So that notebook goes in the kitchen drawer. I find that book as I'm recreating my house. My sister's in town to help me, Terry Stewart, and she's in town, and I find the book in the drawer. I take the book to my prayer corner in my living room, looking out at the neighbors' ducks and chickens and the trees and everything. And I'm just sobbing my eyes out. And I literally said out loud, Carol, Jesus, should I write this book? And the answer was, yes, go for it. I heard it as clear as I'm hearing your voices here today. And from that, it was like, boom. My friend Dan calls and says, Joanie, I want you to come to Ashland. I want you to meet Catherine Greenspan. She's a publisher. It's time for you to write your book. Seconds later, my sister Gail calls and she says, Joanie, what are you doing? I said, I'm writing a book. She goes, you don't read books and you don't write books. And so I said, well, what do you think? And she goes, well, hang on. She's 1,000 miles away in Southern California. She draws the picture on the cover of None Better.
Oh, is that what?
That's where that came from.
That's
and
so
then meanwhile,
awesome.
she says her granddaughter, my grandniece, that, hey, Cammie, 7-year-old Cammie, has drawn a picture for you and Carol, a beautiful rainbow with Aunt Carol and Aunt Joanie below the rainbow. So this is where it all started. Every single moment along this journey, from Mike, Wowzer, in my words, which is the name of the book, the movie, which I love, epitomizes faith. It epitomizes spirituality. It epitomizes divinity that we all have within us. And if we can reach deep, we can find that and we can make our world a better, healthier, happier place. Non-judgmental, accepting and celebrating everybody. And that's what your Wild Rivers Film Foundation does.
We try to celebrate everyone. We really do.
And there's no coincidences.
No, there aren't.
None
There
at
aren't
all.
any.
And hearing you two talk, I can just see that was a finely woven tapestry.
And it's not over yet either.
No, it's not.
I'm not sure where it's going to go, but we have some other footage that we have recorded of the contributors from Joyously Free, 32 contributors. Healing Religious Hurt 17. So we have about, 15 or 20 of those, and I'm not sure what we're going to do with those yet. I really don't.
But your next step is the LA Indie Shorts, right?
Well, no, LA Indie Shorts, this one I think was done in January.
Okay.
So we didn't get any awards for it, but they had us in.
You were an
And
official
that-
selection.
It was shown.
Yeah.
It was shown.
So, I feel pretty good about that because I've been on the path of wanting to figure out how to tell stories that matter, people's stories, authentic stories, because I worked for the mainstream media and I know there's nothing authentic there. It's all paid. And, sooner or later, I got to get paid for stuff too. I mean, we're all in the same boat.
Yes.
But this was a whole different kind of trip because it was so authentic, and for it to have come from so far back was a little mind-blowing for Mike. I still I don't even begin to pretend to understand what I'm doing here yet.
But you're on this path, right? You retired and then you went back to school to learn editing and
Post-production and all the parts I hadn't gotten during, yeah.
So you come to Brookings with this wonderful toolbox of filmmaking skills that you share. And that's so incredible.
My life has been a toolbox aggregator. I don't know how else to put it. It's what I've always done, and figuring out how to how to use the tools in an effective way for humans, because the other half of not having our authentic stories in the mainstream media is when we tell the authentic stories, they ring true. I'm less bothered by AI than I am knowing that it will be a fallacy and eventually a bubble that bursts, because it's not human. And when you dial deep into all the stories coming out of AI, this is the first thing you realize. They're still trying to convince us that they can pretend as good as we can live. And I just kind of don't think that's so.
I think you're absolutely right. Definite.
So we tell stories. That's what we do.
Over and over and over again. And it's all about people. It's not always about us. it just triggers the relatability. That's what Wowzer does. People can relate to it. People can relate to the books. And when people can relate to it, then they will share their story. They will share their voice. And the more of us that can use our voice, our world will become better.
We should have you come talk to the students at the film workshop this summer,
I would love to do that. Sign me up. I'm in.
Because I think that your film speaks to all age groups. And it's very encouraging about telling our stories.
So for those of you who are joining us today and wondering how do you get a hold of Joanie, how should the audience go about getting a hold of you if they want more info?
Yes, I'm on social media big time. Wowzer is on YouTube, Joyously Joanie channel, and the Michael Gorse channel. And so that's the best way to find Wowzer. But in terms of personally getting hold of me, I am on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. I'm around town. I'm here in Brookings, Oregon, and KCIW. I'm a radio producer now, which I can't believe, and that happened. And so now I'm syndicated to Humboldt County, and I'm syndicated to Medford and Ashland as well.
Congratulations.
All of that is happening. So, but how do you get a hold of me? That's how you do it. Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, or Joyously Joanie.
Okay, well, to our audience, if you see Joanie or Michael out there around town in Brookings, stop and tell them hi. And we're going to encourage our listeners to seek out Wowzer on YouTube as part of this year's Wild Rivers Film Festival. So I think that's it for this episode of Wild Rivers Film Radio. To learn more about the festival, buy passes, volunteer, or explore sponsorship opportunities, and we have those for you, visit wildriversfilmfestival.com. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. Our recordings today are by Ray Simon. He's in the control booth there with Rick Davidson. Sound mixing and editing is done by Tom Bozak. I'm your producer, Sue Wright. Our guests today are Joanie Lindenmeyer and Michael Gorse, and our hosts are myself and Bev Juday. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for having us.
You're very welcome. You guys were fantastic guests.
This was great.
It was
See
fun.
everybody at the festival, huh?
And we'll see you at the movies.
We'll definitely see you at the movie. And thanks for joining us, everyone out there.